Welcome to Shake Up That Staff Meeting with Alexandria Abenshon, sponsored by LAMS and co-sponsored by RLRT. Take it away, Alexandria.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. This is Shake Up That Staff Meeting. Next slide, please. My name's Alexandria Abenshon, though I go by Lex. My current role at the New York Public Library is the manager of school-age children's programming, though I was managing a branch library at NYPL and supervising a staff of 10 when I submitted this program proposal. It was during my time as a library manager that I began to feel such a passion for maximizing the time we spent together developing as professionals. And we spend such little time together as a whole staff that I started to feel really protective of this time. And a year into my time as a library manager, I decided to do something about it. But my awareness of this time starts where I think it starts for a lot of people, as someone attending bad staff meetings and then someone leading bad staff meetings. Next slide, please. But before we dive too deeply into the changes that I made, I'm going to share some quick stats with you. A year after I started making all of the changes to our staff meeting and our professional development structure, I took part in a leadership training program at my system as part of just an opportunity for managers to develop as professionals and to get to know one another. And we all presented a final program as part of a mini conference. And you guessed it, my topic, staff meetings. I surveyed the library managers of my system, of which there are 88 neighborhood libraries in Manhattan, the Bronx, and Staten Island, and I asked them about their staff meetings. I asked 3 short questions. How often do you meet? How long do you meet? And what topics do you usually cover? I also provided the opportunity to share notes too. 40 managers responded, and as you can see by the chart, the response was overwhelmingly one-sided. Nearly 90% of respondents met on a monthly basis, and I bet they're still meeting on a monthly basis too. That mirrors my experience both as a manager and as an employee. So think about that. In 1 year, we meet 12 times with our entire staff. Next slide, please. There was far more diversity among the responses to the question, how long do you meet? But the majority of respondents still had one predominant answer, approximately 60 minutes. Other popular answers included 45 minutes, which meant that they were leaving about 15 minutes to prepare the branch for opening. And in our current operational structure, most branches scheduled 1 hour for morning prep before opening, which means these managers that are meeting for 1 hour or 60 minutes, are they really able to meet for that entire 60-minute period? Probably not. We weren't able to when I was managing a branch because you can't run from the 3rd floor or the 2nd floor, wherever you're meeting, all the way to the front door to let those ravenous patrons into the library. You have to leave a little bit of flex time. There were also a number of interesting outliers in this group of responses too, that included anywhere from 30 minutes to 90 minutes. I was particularly interested in the 30-minute response because that made me wonder how often this particular manager was meeting with his or her staff or their staff. I wondered if this particular manager was meeting more frequently because I am a talker by nature and I could not imagine getting through anything in 30 minutes, let alone important updates that we needed to cover to maintain our operations, cover important policy changes. I mean, we barely got through any of our usual gripes or concerns in 30 minutes, let alone the nitty-gritty stuff. So, looming question, but it was an anonymous survey. I'll just never know. But again, 60 minutes, and let's think about that. 60 minutes, 12 times throughout the year. That's 12 hours a year that we're meeting with our entire staff. And that's the average, right? So that's 60 minutes that we're devoting to staff culture, to branch operations, to professional development. And yeah, you might have one-on-one conversations, time that you spend walking to the subway, to your cars in the parking lot. There are a lot of opportunities for individual engagement. But 12 hours that you're spending devoting to culture. And that's really what staff meetings are about. And think about this. What if someone calls out? Are we really able to spend these 12 hours with our entire staff? Next slide, please. Naturally, the short answer portion of the survey brought in a wide range of responses from the managers. Topics that were typically covered include general updates and policy changes, network news, and for our system, because we have so many branches, our branches are separated into 7 networks for easier management. So that means that we would be sharing things that were a little bit more local to each network. Managers also covered team building and general points of discussion. Other comments were equally wide-ranging, but most focused on the scheduling difficulties that managers often faced. Because let's face it, branch schedules are, in the best of times, really challenging, and it can greatly impact a manager's ability to schedule meetings on a consistent basis. I know that even when I prioritized monthly meetings on a very consistent routine, I love a routine, there were still months that we weren't able to meet because of time off combined with outreach or programs or school visits, plus this, plus that, plus the other thing. It just wasn't possible. And that was with consistent effort into this one particular area. I also really appreciate the manager that mentioned bringing snacks. I'm always a fan of snacks, and it's by no means a requirement. But when we started stepping up our staff meeting game, we also brought our snack game to the next level as well. So we took our breakfast from Dunkin' Donuts. Though I'd like to say that there is nothing wrong with Dunkin' Donuts, I will still eat my weight in donuts. But we went global with the snacks that we were bringing. We had dumplings some months. We went to a Chinese bakery. We went to a Filipino bakery. We took that to the next level too, because we were just pushing ourselves. So a big shout out to the snack game as well. Next slide, please. Now, it is our first opportunity to reflect, and you can think about these answers or grab some paper, maybe open up a fresh Word document or Google Doc, because I bet you're on a computer watching this. And this is a good opportunity to keep track of these answers if you're going to be thinking about this long term. But do you see your staff meeting style or routine reflected in the survey results? And if you do, what's been working for you so far? The great thing about on-demand recordings is that you can pause me. So take a few minutes and write down your thoughts or just reflect before you move on. Next slide, please. Now, once I realized that this wasn't working for us and things were just awkward, we changed the game. These numbers are really stressful, right? In a people-driven field, we don't necessarily spend a lot of time developing as people or as professionals as a group. I firmly believe that developing branch culture or group culture in whatever setting that you're in, it doesn't have to be a library branch, is really important because you're delivering a service to patrons, to people, to whatever you're calling them, and it matters how you're doing it. And while your system or your workplace undoubtedly offers you training, each location or each department is a little bit different. And you definitely hold your staff to a particular standard. But if you're not able to articulate that or share why your particular style or standard is important, your staff won't understand. After attending PLA in 2018, I returned to work really inspired. I left New York one person and I came back another. It was a metamorphosis. I shed one skin and came back just ready to re-engage. We had just gone through a really big staffing change and the team was ready for a new direction. Um, there was a new zest to the team. There was a lightness, and I think we were just ready to take our work to the next level. So I did something that I'm going to recommend later that you don't do, and I made a lot of changes really fast. We had been working together for a year, and we had gone through a lot of changes in that time. Changes that we didn't make intentionally, things that just happened. So we were ready to make decisions for ourselves. And so I opted to put most of the emphasis in our meetings on team building and professional development instead of general updates and regurgitative information. And to mark this shift, we started calling our meetings strategic sessions instead of staff meetings. And that's because I believe words matter. Not necessarily because I think calling something a strategic session makes it more important or better than calling it a staff meeting, but because it marks it as something different than before. You could call your staff meeting purple banana time if that means that now is different than before. It would probably be a little confusing to some people, but if that difference is impactful for you, go for it. I currently have a standing meeting on my calendar called the Ripe Plantains. So you see where I'm coming from with the banana thing, right? And it doesn't necessarily make sense to anyone but the people who are meeting. And that's okay. It doesn't have to really make a lot of sense as long as it is impactful and meaningful to you. So, strategic sessions. It's a little clumsy, it's alliterative. I really like alliteration. And I believe in walking the walk and talking the talk. So, we really committed to calling these strategic sessions. And in the new model, I moved most of our reminders and non-time sensitive updates to a weekly email. Anything that was time sensitive or important was shared immediately. And that's definitely a best practice. Keep doing that. But this meant that we spent less time listening to me just drone on about small changes and more time listening to other experts or in conversation with one another. So in this weekly email, I would share really mundane updates, things that were coming down the line but weren't necessarily here yet. And this was really great for my team because it immediately gave them something that they could look back to. If they couldn't remember a new policy or a change, they could go back into their email. And it was harder for some staff than others. And I needed to make sure that staff were reading for absorption and comprehension rather than just skimming. So every week, I hid a song lyric in amongst the updates. And it was usually a silly or fun song or something that I heard or it was stuck in my head. And I asked that they send me that lyric by the end of the next day. So I sent our updates on Thursdays and asked to have that lyric by the end of the next day, Friday. There was always a little bit of flexibility with that too. And then because I'm a fun boss, the next week I would send the music video for whatever that song was. And, branch life is hard too. While you can definitely get around this email idea by having agendas for your staff meetings or other things like that, it's hard when you don't necessarily have a dedicated desk or a place to keep track of lots of papers. And we found that the email archive worked really well for us. Next slide, please. Thank you. So when we were actually getting into the strategic sessions, we started each session with a TED Talk because in this moment, I was really inspired by all of these amazing experts teaching me about things that I would otherwise never learn anything about. So each staff member in a rotation would select a TED Talk, and it could be whatever they wanted. Didn't matter what it was. It didn't have to necessarily relate to libraries in an obvious way, but they had to be willing to tell us why they picked it. And after we watched the talk, and after the selector shared why they selected it, we discussed the talk as a group. And we talked about what, if anything, we could apply to our daily practices and our daily operations. And there were some talks that were very obviously tied to libraries. The text on this particular slide is a little bit small because it's a screenshot of an email. I sent a digest to my staff of the talks that they had picked after the first 6 months of this shift. So for July, for example, someone selected "The library is not a place, it's a concept." For August, "What to expect from libraries in the 21st century." And then September, "All it takes is 10 mindful minutes." And so there were some really direct applications for these talks. And then there were things that, as people became more confident and started to settle into this new normal, that we began to expand what we were selecting and what we were talking about. And again, there were some really practical applications about libraries and how we could better serve our patrons in the new normal, in today's world. But then there were also opportunities for reflection, like with the mindfulness, because public service is hard. It's really hard some days, and it helps to be mindful. That led us to meditate on occasion. And that was more popular with some staff members than others, but everyone was really willing to give it a try. And, it was really exciting to see what people picked. And no one rolled their eyes at me, which I really found very exciting. October's selection was Sound Health in 8 Steps. And this particular selection was made by one of my staff members with whom I found to be challenging most frequently. And I say challenging in the best way because, if there's always agreement, you never grow. So this particular staff member was always willing to give my weird ideas a shot, but was also willing to challenge me and debate me when I had these weird ideas. And so October's selection felt like a message and a message received. I'm a children's librarian by training, and I love a loud library. To me, that means that people are in the library, they're using the library. It's a place of exploration and discovery. But to this staff member, it meant that chaos reigned. There was no sense of traditional library-ness. It was just too much. So this also gave me an opportunity to take the temperature of the group, because it was a way to send messages without explicitly communicating. And it was really an interesting way for us to communicate without directly communicating. And I appreciated the messages without putting one another on the spot. I found that people were incredibly thoughtful in their selections, and I was routinely impressed, even when there were messages in the subtext of what was being selected. It was really exciting, and beyond the 6 months that you see here in the snapshot, the talks that were selected were continually impressive, and they transitioned from very concrete ideas about libraries to being very internally focused. So you can see December's, which is called Perspective is Everything, is very much internally focused. And that, I think, is where we saw the most growth. So these discussions were always very open and very raw in a very positive way. Next slide, please. So after we had our TED Talk and our discussion, we moved on to what became one of my favorite parts of our session. But I do have a confession. Until I actively started promoting activities in my own sessions, I hated them. I felt like they were cheesy and they were just performative because they had zero lasting impact. But my staff laughed loudly and often, which I really prided myself on, and I wanted to encourage that as often as possible. So I knew that they would approach activities differently, which is why I wanted to approach them differently too. And I knew that these activities wouldn't be laugh out loud games or fun in the same way that our karaoke nights were, but I wanted the activities to have impact on our day-to-day in the same way that the TED Talks did. So we started with the most important activity, which was the credo, and I'll share that on the next slide. But after developing that, we focused on activities that increased our knowledge of one another or our skills as library professionals. Brene Brown's website, Dare to Lead, has a really excellent values exercise that was the most enlightening activity that I've ever done with my staff. In this exercise, staff are instructed to select just 2 values that they feel embody them the most from a list of about 100 guiding values or words, and then they share those values and why they picked them. I noted which values they selected, but not necessarily why. And I also did this activity too, because I am part of the staff just as much as everyone else. But these values helped me later on in our one-on-ones, but also in literally all future encounters with my staff. Because it was very easy to think about these values as indicators for behavior. So if a particular staff member is being exceptionally compassionate towards a patron that I would have zero patience for, I can think back to this values exercise and understand why this particular staff member may be more understanding than I would be in that particular situation. Or if I am having trouble understanding a staff member's perspective on a particular issue, I can look back to my notes and look at their values and try to see their perspective a little bit. It was one of those opportunities to really get to know my staff as people and as team members, because they are separate, but they're also tied together because I bring my whole self to work, but that's not necessarily how everyone approaches their job. And this was really, really enlightening for me. This is also something that scales up. So my manager picked up this activity as something to use with her direct reports, so myself and my colleagues. And as managers of libraries across the network, we didn't share a physical space together all the time, but we were still able to use this values exercise to inform how we worked together because it let us know who we could approach for different needs. If I knew that I just needed to talk to someone, I could ask my colleague at a library in Harlem because they value compassion. Or if I needed someone who knew how to navigate a particular department because they were very direct, I could talk to someone in Midtown. It was, again, really enlightening, even though we weren't together day in, day out. Next slide, please. Now, I briefly mentioned the Credo activity as being the first and most important activity we completed, and it's true. As a team, we collaboratively developed 5 priorities that defined our branch culture. And for us, that was maintain the flow, supreme self-starters, instant service, family feelings, and Oscar-worthy acting. So you can see on the slide that I scribbled this down on a whiteboard in my signature cursive, and this was really collaborative. I actually contributed almost nothing to this development other than as a scribe, but I turned it over to my staff. It's like, what do you want our branch to be? How do you want our culture to be defined? If we're hosting a guest from another branch or another network, what do you want them to think when they leave? And that's what we came up with. After we had our guiding principles, I added 5 addendums. And so they became maintaining the flow, make sure hiring decisions complement the group dynamic, supreme self-starters, everyone takes care of business without having to be asked, instant service, ready to serve our patrons quickly, family feelings, it's easy, we love each other, Oscar-worthy acting, keep it cool, don't let them see you sweat. And after I added the addendums, I created a sign that I posted everywhere. And you can see that it is bright yellow. So if you were in a staff space, you could see the Credo. In an office, you can see it. The yellow Credo sign was literally everywhere. It was a constant reminder of where you were and how we agreed collaboratively to conduct ourselves. And this is another activity that's super adaptable. My manager also picked this up to use with our network. And even though, again, that we did not share a physical space, it was a great reminder of how we agreed to support one another and how we agreed to act when we were all in a meeting together. And this is an activity that you can do on a yearly basis. Check in to see if this is still accurate and if this is still what your culture should be. Does this still make sense? Is this still how you want your culture to be defined? Is it accurate? I don't know. Next slide, please. And even though our focus was on professional development and team building, I definitely wanted to keep space and needed to keep space for staff to speak openly and freely about their updates or concerns. We regularly talked about problems or ideas that didn't have an easy answer or a way forward at that moment. And it was really important that we verbalize those ideas rather than send emails back and forth because I think it's often really easy to send an email. I know that I told you to send weekly updates, but there's something to conversation, right? It's really important to verbalize ideas. And there's a big difference, as I said, between regurgitating information and collaborating on an idea and sharing space with someone in that way. I was always really clear that though I may make a decision, I also make mistakes and that I don't see everything that happens in the branch, so that the input and feedback from staff was paramount to making the branch a success and delivering excellent service. Open mic was as important as the activities, as the TED Talks. It was as much a part of the pie as everything else. And I would be remiss not to harp on the open mic. Next slide, please. So, where were we headed? A few months before I accepted my new position, we voted as a team to extend our strategic sessions from 60 to 90 minutes. So that meant that staff would be coming in earlier, but we'd be able to dedicate more time to all of the activities and discussions that I've mentioned thus far. So we agreed democratically to take our 12 hours to 18. And I found that really exciting because we tried the strategic sessions in a 1 hour format, and they found them valuable enough that they agreed without prompting or bribery to come in earlier and spend more time together. And that warmed my heart beyond anything I can describe, because I felt such a sense of camaraderie and understanding between the staff that I think speaks to the culture that we were trying to create. And that is the point of shaking up the staff meeting. I was also planning on turning over the planning and run of show to staff and saving all of my information or topics of discussion for open mic, definitely at the end, so that staff still have the time that they need to bring up any points of discussion. And I find that the more I work directly with staff, the more I'm interested in their take on things, interested in finding what they're interested in and seeing their needs. Even though I'm a talker, I can be in the back seat and still convey the information I need to share. And that's true no matter what role that I find myself in. And I think that can be true for you too. You don't have to be a branch manager to shake up whatever meeting that you host. And while my experience thus far has been in branch management and hosting that type of meeting, it's definitely adaptable. And so how do you actually adapt this format? It's not hard. You don't have to do much. Even if you're in a support role like I am now, you can use these activities and these tips from the literature that I'll share with you shortly to guide you as you support staff, regardless of your role. So in my current position, I supervise one employee. So I went from 10 to 1, and we don't work in public service anymore. We don't interact with the public at all. But the main goal of our job is to support youth staff across the system who do. So we now host network meetings where youth staff regularly attend, and the same practices still apply. The TED Talks we choose or they might choose could be different, or they very well could be the same. My current role sees me offering a lot more updates since I'm not communicating in this style in large meetings with the same staff as frequently. or having that one-on-one time day in, day out. So it does alter the dynamics a little bit, but I can still give staff ownership by letting the hosting branch, when we're meeting in person, pick a TED Talk or a resource to share. And I can give each branch 5 minutes for show and tell to brag about something amazing that they've done recently. There are a lot of ways to give ownership back to the people that you're supporting. You can take bits and pieces of what's worked on one level and apply it to your current situation. These ideas are like model magic. You can mold it and fit it to what you need it to be, because it's not one size fits all, but the core ideas are applicable when you mold them to the different scenarios. Next slide, please. Okay, it's our second chance to reflect. You can pause me again, but don't forget, you can just think about these questions, or you can pick up that same piece of paper, click into that Google Doc or Word doc if you've started to keep track of your answers. So what could you be doing differently? How might you change up your staff meeting to focus on different topics? Next slide, please. Okay, you've decided that you want to change up your staff meeting. You're ready to shake it up. So how do you get started? Step 1, reflect. You know what a bad staff meeting is. You've almost certainly been to them. You also probably have a good idea of what a good one is. And if you're like me, you probably love lists. So make one. What would you want to keep? What would you do differently? Jot some ideas down. It doesn't have to be something you share with anyone. And you can, if it's a paper list, throw it away. You can delete the doc if it's not a paper list. Just do some thinking about what works for you and what doesn't. Step 2, do the legwork. I don't want to assume that just because you're working in libraries that you love to read, but read the literature if you're so inclined, or do some research, again, if you're so inclined. But think about what your natural management style is, and also think about the gaps. Like I said, I'm a talker, which means that I have to take a step back in a lot of situations and let other people do the talking. I am also really adept, most of the time, at technology, but I acknowledge that other staff members may not be as comfortable. So when I shoot off 100 emails to the same people, they may need more time to sift through all of that information. Read the books, do the research, think about what would work for you and what wouldn't. You can do this along with the reflection. You can switch those up. There's not really a right or wrong here. Number 3, collaborate on new concepts and ideas with your staff. I think my average right now is about 30% good ideas, 70% bad ideas. And my staff got really comfortable being like, nope, bad idea, Lex, next. And that's great. But you also want to be at a point with them where they're really comfortable telling you their great ideas too, because that increases ownership and buy-in. And that's where you want to be. You also want to say yes as often as you can, because if every answer is no, that makes it hard, right? If every idea that you've ever had can't happen, are you going to engage? It's not likely, right? Number 4, be intentional. Don't change things about your staff meeting or your strategic session or operations just for the sake of changing them. There will definitely be some things that you want to change because they're not working. But as our first reflection may have shown, There may be things that are working out really well for you, and that's awesome. You should keep those. So be intentional with what you change because you also might only want to do this once. You may want to do it more than once too, and that's okay. But try to do the work with so much intention that when you're doing it, it has meaning. Number 5, and this is the one that I told you I didn't do. Introduce changes slowly because change is hard, even for your superstar staff members who are totally on board with all of your ideas. It's hard to keep up, right? There are a lot of things changing in our world, even on the best of days. And there are a lot of things happening even outside of the little bubble that is your department, your branch, whatever it is. So introduce what you're changing slowly. It'll give people time to acclimate to what you've decided to change. And it will also help them to understand the intricacies of your change as well. And make sure that you fully explain the change and why the change is happening, and allow for questions and conversation, because I have always appreciated the why, and I know that my staff did too. Number 6, be reasonable. I don't know about you, but I forget stuff all the time. So it will definitely take time for your staff to adjust to the new normal. And if you come down on people really hard the first time they forget, that's, not the nicest way, right? Uh, and I have no doubt that you would be immensely understanding. But make space for mistakes. And finally, celebrate the small victories. You may never have 100% enthusiastic buy-in, but you might have fewer complaints or less awkward staring, and that's awesome. You should celebrate that. Because again, work is hard sometimes. Public service is hard. You should definitely celebrate getting through the day, getting through a tough reference interaction. Make space for those really exciting moments because you deserve to celebrate. Next slide, please. Now, I told you I had some book recommendations, and full disclosure, I love a good professional development book. And if you're new to this type of book, these are 4 really great ones to get you started. Each book in this starter pack contributed a really valuable piece of information, if not a chunk of information, to my philosophy, particularly around shaping the culture of your team. Each title directly impacted the way that I thought about the time we spent together, and Brene Brown's Dare to Lead even provided an activity that I mentioned earlier. And her website, which is daretolead.brenebrown.com, has so many great activities that you can get for free too. She's great. Read all her books. Can't recommend her more highly. You can't go wrong with literally any of these titles, even if you're picking just one. I wouldn't rank them beyond just these 4. They were all really wonderful. So pause me, take a screenshot, write them down. Excuse me. Whatever you want to do to keep track of them, all really amazing. As a librarian, I try not to buy a ton of books, but these are in my personal collection. Next slide, please. Now, some deep cuts. If you really love to read about management, professional development, and leadership as much as I do, I have a few more recommendations. These books were just as wonderful as the books in the starter pack, but they travel down a slightly different path. For example, Being Boss is really about directing your own career in a more creative field, so kind of managing your own business, but there's a lot of great tips for how to spend your time, how to manage your time, and how to center yourself. The same thing with Limitless Mind. It's really about tapping into maximizing yourself and maximizing your employees, understanding the strengths of different people. Stacey Abrams, amazing. Can't, I mean, Stacey Abrams, can't say more. And Radical Candor is also really amazing, but I find that it's more aspirational because a lot of people aren't ready to be radically candid, even if you are. So there's a little bit of awkwardness there. So these books are really great, but may not speak to as many people yet. So I would recommend starting with one book from the starter pack and then one book from the deep cut and bouncing back and forth if you want to kind of shake it up, as it were. Next slide, please. And finally, please feel free to email me at any time. I would really love to hear from you, whether it's to talk about some of the books that you've read from those two slides, or if you have tried out any of the techniques that I've talked about during this presentation. My email address is here on the slide, and it is my full first and last name, Alexandria Abenshon at nypl.org. It's a long one, so do your best. And I love to chat staff engagement, as I said, so please reach out. Let's talk. I want to hear from you. Thank you again for joining me, and I really hope that you found this helpful. Not every technique will work for every staffing situation, but again, I want to hear from you. Tell me how it went. Tell me if it was good or if it was bad. And please enjoy the rest of your conference. I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Lex. This concludes the NYLA 2020 On-Demand Program Shake Up That Staff meeting. We hope you continue to take advantage of all the on-demand and live programs the NYLA 2020 Annual Virtual Conference has to offer. Thank you for helping us to make this the best virtual conference ever.